You're winning. 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 Hello, you are winning with another episode of Epic Understanding. I am your host, Coach Love, and today I want to introduce you to someone special. It is my very favorite superhero. So just wait one moment and I'll bring him right up.
Oh, you got me, Jake 𝐓𝐈𝐏𝐒.
Dad?
Professional comic book artist Led Bradshaw's son Jake was just 3.5 years old when he was diagnosed with autism.
What did you know about autism?
I really didn't know anything. The diagnosis led me to do a lot of research.
Through that research, Led discovered art therapy exercises that he started incorporating into his son's daily routines.
And then one of the projects was envision yourself as a superhero. He started drawing himself as this character, and it was all that he wanted to talk about.
And it would seem as if the apple didn't fall far from the tree, because you were quite the comic book kid too.
And I guess you can see behind me, it's like I never let that go. I knew what I wanted to do ever since I was little. Like, all I wanted to do was draw Saturday morning cartoons. No, Walking Dead and Night of the Living Dead are two different things.
Led and Jake started nerding out over everything comic related they could get their hands on. And they soon found themselves collaborating on their first original father-son comic book, Jake 𝐓𝐈𝐏𝐻.
How did that first Jake 𝐓𝐈𝐏𝐻 book come to be?
Jake was in the 2nd grade, and it was a parent-teachers conference about his ability to remember like sight words and spelling. The whole idea came about when I asked the teacher, I was like, well, could I have a list of the sight words the kids are learning?
Out of that list, Led began creating flashcards for his son. On them, he drew pictures of a superhero in Jake's likeness, acting out the vocabulary words.
Jake flying, Jake, running real fast. So he learned the words run, jump. So what kind of color hair would he have?
You would have blue hair.
What's his role now?
He's involved in almost every part of it, creating the characters, envisioning like the backstory. He sits at my side while I'm putting it all together, so I get his stamp of approval. Like that?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I should hire you.
So sometimes he'll say, Dad, that's actually not my vision. We need to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, sometimes I like to lend my creative input, but I just give in. There's no point in arguing.
What has this meant for him emotionally, intellectually, being this involved in a project like this?
His vocabulary started to build. He became more confident. It's like being a superhero, he started to emulate the character also. Even though it's a collaborative thing, it's more like a love letter to my son, where I can actually teach him how to be a good human being, to not give up, to work your hardest, to do your best.
In addition to raising awareness about autism through the character of Jake 𝐓𝐓𝐻𝐒, Led also created a website to help educate people about autism spectrum disorder and foster a sense of community for parents.
As a parent, I wanted to create something to show people that you're not alone. This does not define who their children will be. There are amazing and exceptional individuals who are on the autism spectrum. I wanted to create something that gives people hope.
a feeling of hope, strength, and confidence that has surely rubbed off on his son, Jake.
Jake, do you have a favorite comic book character?
Yes, that's me.
Mine too, Jake Jetpulse. I'm a big fan. Can I ask you about autism?
If you're diagnosed with autism, that's not bad. It's okay. You're still unique and you can do anything.
Oh boy, isn't that just the best? It is just the best. Jake Jetpulse. Who came up with that name?
Wow, that's we kind of both did. It was a little bit of help from like YouTube videos, and well, the character originally started being Super Jake,
Yeah.
and I wanted something cooler, something that would like roll off the tongue a little bit more. And as we're searching through names on the internet, somehow like the universe makes it possible that you wind up finding somebody who's using the name Super Jake. So
Okay.
what do I do with the character now that we've created with this big giant J on his chest? And we had to go back to the drawing board and look for something that was cool that started with the letter J. So, you know, after a while, we started thinking of different names, and they went back to all the comic books that I've ever read, and like some of like the comic book characters, their names like Clark Kent, Peter Parker, you know, things like that. So the Lois Lane. So it kind of had a ring to it. So the Jet Pulse thing was actually me just sitting around. I watched YouTube videos just to gain more knowledge. I mean, every now and then there's the funny fail videos, but I like to learn something. So I was watching a video about pulse jets.
Okay.
And for some strange reason, I just kept playing around with the name Pulse Jet for some reason, and then I, inverted it in Jet Pulse. Hey, that's a really cool idea. So I went to Jake and said, "Hey, what do you think about this name? What do you think this sounds like?" Jake Jet Pulse. And he didn't say anything for like a few seconds. Then he just stood there with this fist at his waist, and he's like, "Jake Jet Pulse," and then pretended to make his cape fly, because he wore a cape everywhere he went. So I'm like, okay, the name's gonna stick. I like it. And that's so it's by accident.
You know what? I'm a fan. Jake Jet Pulse, everything it stands for. My favorite thing that you said is that you just wanted to teach him how to be a good human. And
Yes.
that's something that we all need to learn.
Right. It's something that we we struggle with every day when you think about it, whether you're stuck in traffic or, this bad things happen. And I wanted to teach my son just all the life lessons that I could. I just spun it with a superhero, twist.
You
And
did. And what I like about that message, I have to tell you, is that he just so happens to be autistic.
right.
It's not the thing about him. He just so happens to be autistic, just like, I happen to have a cute button nose.
That's right.
So it's not his whole personality.
Right.
And it's teaching everyone, not just people with autism or children with autism, but everyone, that these are struggles that you're going to have to go through, and just to lead with your strengths.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful. Now, give us a little bit about your background, because you're a comic book guy. This is what you do for a living.
Right. So growing up, this is everything I always wanted to do. So when I was a kid, like a lot of my friends wanted to be police officers and doctors and firemen, and they're all respectable professions. However, I just wanted to make Saturday morning cartoons. And there was just something in me that I knew that's all I ever wanted to do, was just make Saturday morning cartoons. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to draw.
Okay.
And I loved drawing. And that was just my passion. That was the way how I learned how to soothe myself when I was nervous. It was my way of expressing myself when I was happy. It's the way how I learned to write and remember things. It's like the way how like the Egyptians had hieroglyphics. I basically learned to write by drawing on my notes. Of course,
see.
that would be getting into a lot of trouble at school, but but throughout my throughout my whole life, that's all I ever wanted to do. I remember like when Jake was we were just days away from him, coming into the world, and I was saying to myself, I want to do something art related. I want to do something good with this talent because I want my son. I want to be the type of dad that like my son could be proud of. So I wanted to leave something behind, and that's when I started taking art a lot more seriously than I did before. And that's how I started getting into like graphic design, and then working in like as like product testing, and like writing editorial pieces about electronics, and then like creating instruction manuals, like doing things like that. So I just kept pushing myself, and that's what it was. I just kept pushing myself, wanting to like the need to do better.
So that was filmed a few years ago when you were on the Today Show, but you guys have gotten, national acclaim. And I think I saw something overseas on you guys. So you're getting the traction for sure, right?
Yeah.
You're getting the traction for sure. What kind of partnerships have you been able to make in raising this level of awareness?
Well, we've been very fortunate enough to work with Multicultural Children's Book Day, which is really the wonderful organization that introduces children to the multicultural authors, stories that that involve like characters that are more relatable, who are just like them, and it was really great to align ourselves with them. And it's been just a wonderful experience, like speaking with people from let's think, oh wow. So wow, that's one, the National Autism Association, which is great. Working with teachers in schools, and which has also been which has been really awesome. So wow, there's so many people to name that. So there's so many people to name, but it's like it's been a wonderful experience. It's something that I didn't think that initially I would just wanted to teach Jake how to read, and this is where it started. Me creating flashcards, with the superheroes. If that was a special interest. I had no idea that like really it would be so well received by everyone. So it's just like it's when I think about it still, like it still kind of blows my mind.
Wow. Well, I can definitely tell you that using this type of therapy is really well received across the board. And I've just brought to the stage, if she would unmute herself, Dr. Anitra Shelton-Quinn. Dr. Quinn, please tell us a little bit about your background and your personal experience with autism, and shed a little light on this subject matter for us.
Yes, ma'am. I happen to, and I have an echo here. Let's see. Do you guys hear that? Is there echo?
No, not anymore.
Okay, good. So I happen to have been introduced to autism initially back in the late 90s, early 2000s. As a graduate student, I was doing early intervention evaluations on a graduate team that was through a state grant. And so that's how I really got my initial start in autism. I was always very intrigued by autism. As we know, autism is a neurobiological or neurodevelopmental disorder that affects children across communication, social skills, as well as sensory, that taste, touch, feel, smell. It can also affect executive functioning, as well as emotional regulation. Now, what's interesting, I said, the Lord had a sense of humor, because 8 years ago, I gave birth to the most amazing little boy. His name is Caleb Elijah, and Caleb is awesome. SOME for autism. And it's interesting, when I first started to notice that there were some what we call atypicalities with Caleb, it was when he was pretty young. I noticed some things that, as an evaluator and expert in the area, we don't necessarily look at some of the things I noticed, but when you've been around and you've done the research and you've worked with kids upon kids upon kids with all of their unique capabilities across the autism spectrum, you start to pick up on the fine idiosyncrasies. And I saw some of those in Caleb at a very early age. And it was interesting to me because as a psychologist, I had to deal with my own emotions of recognizing what was to come. I saw it before I saw it. Does that make sense? I saw it. I saw it as the psychologist who has all of this experience first. And as a parent, you pull back, and this many times as I'm doing these evaluations, have to be the one to convey to parents, okay, so this is what we're seeing. And I love how Led put it, this, it's not the end of the world. This is not, and that's my little awesome guy there. So I go ahead and do a disclaimer. If you do see a little one come through running or what, all the fun stuff that he does, that is Caleb. And so, interestingly enough, some of those things we don't look at, but there are early signs. And I like the way Led put it, it's not the end of the world. I always tell parents, children with autism are a unique gift and blessing. They teach you how to truly embrace life across so many different areas. I promise you. We took Caleb to Disney for the first time this weekend, or this past week. And when I tell you, I'm looking forward to doing a video. I'll talk about what are some of the things parents need to know. And so it was a great experience, but I know that there's some feedback that I do want to give. Now, in terms of the therapy you're talking about, what you're talking about is so super important for kids with autism, the social skills component. And what I see you doing, Led, has so much to do with implementing social stories through your comic books. Social stories are how we teach kids with autism how to navigate the social scene. It's extremely challenging for them because they do not have that, what we like to say, that untaught kind of non-purposeful social development. They're not learning from their observations. Most kids learn, I'm sorry,
It's okay.
It's fine.
And demonstration. Our kids with autism do not pick up on that social observation process. Okay. So what happens is, even though they're in these situations, their takeaway doesn't generalize to other situations. Their takeaway stays in the moment. Okay. And it gets compartmentalized in just that specific event. Okay. And so if I can pause just a minute here. Sorry, I had to talk to my older son because he does things that he knows will get Caleb any little thing. And so when we talk about using social stories, I also like, Led, how you talked about working with schools. It's so important to take those social skills trainings and comic books and things like that teach kids and that allows them to.
But you know what? This show is about parenting. So she's actually parenting.
This is real life, okay? Okay. Noah, please stop frightening him, okay? Okay. Let me just get the dad in here just a minute. I'm gonna have to, just a minute. Oh my goodness.
We'll handle that, and then I'll go ahead and I'll talk to Led for a moment.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so Led, tell me, how did that moment resonate with you? Because, Dr. Quinn, she had her hands full in that moment. What were you thinking?
That's pretty much every day. That's that's pretty much a day in the life. That's, and if Jake were here right now, like, it would be the scenario would be a lot different. It would be him chasing the dog chasing him chasing the dog, me telling him to sit down. It would be pretty much the same thing. So
I see.
Yeah.
Now, did that bring pressure on your marriage?
No, actually, that didn't. As a matter of fact, it didn't bring any pressure on that. It does create a strain on relationships, however. I mean, it does, and I'll explain. It's from my experience. I think my problem was after, after receiving the diagnosis that Jake was on, was on the autism spectrum. Going out and doing everyday things was a little difficult in the beginning, adjusting to Jake was also diagnosed with a speech delay, attention hyper, like hyperactivity disorder. So he had ADHD, and also in the beginning getting myself used to used to Jake. And I remember there were times when Jake would get frustrated, and it would bother me the way people were looking at me or whatever. And then me thinking to myself oh man, how did I get myself into this? And it caused a little bit of self-isolation because you just didn't want to deal with the way how people looked at you. Right.
So,
And then when it came to relationships and stuff, I have to think more about the, even though even even if Jake even if I didn't have a child, children is a tremendous priority, and especially bringing somebody into my world, and then Jake's as well, and then having them informing them that Jake is on the autism spectrum, and he does require certain patience, and that these are things that you're going to have to take into consideration, because I wouldn't just be with anyone. This is somebody this is somebody who's this is somebody who's special, who's unique. And he also does get attached to people, so it's you don't want to bring just anyone around. And so you're very careful, very selective about the people that you want to introduce your child to, even more so when your child's on the on the autism spectrum. So I'm even more vigilant, cautious, whichever word that I guess that you could use when it comes to meeting people. So yeah, it does create a little bit of a lot of misunderstandings, when it comes to when it came to dating or things like that. It's well, you don't make time for me. It's not that I'm not making time for you. It's also, my son also has separation anxiety. If I walk out the door, he's going to call me every 5 minutes. Dad, when are you coming home? Dad, when are you coming home? And I'm not going to leave him in that frame of mind just to go out and enjoy myself or whatever. His well-being means more. And that means if I have to call the date off, that's something I'm going to have to do. So it does cause a little bit of a misunderstanding. Well, you don't make time for me. It's not that I don't make time for you. It's just my son's well-being is more important. I have to deal with this right now. So yeah, I mean, you'd like your dating life to be healthy, but you want your son's mental health to be just as healthy. And that, I'm not going to put him in the back seat for that. So, but yeah, I hope I answered that one correct.
Actually, I love the way that you answered the question and the depth that you answered the question. And really, I just kind of want to unpack it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the first things that you said is that it just impacts relationships in general, and that
Right.
people have to have patience.
Right.
I just embrace what you said so much. I take care of my mother. She's bedbound, and I have to do things a certain way because of I navigate certain things in that way. And everybody doesn't understand that. And sometimes people make the most ridiculous comments, right?
Right.
And
I just sit there and take it. I don't fight or argue with it sometimes, and I know that maybe, discretion is the better part of valor. So sometimes it had to get to that point where, okay, I'll just let you believe that. Continue on doing what I have to do, because at that moment, maybe that person is just not going to understand. maybe we will revisit this conversation later, you know? And that's something that I had to learn how to do also. So yeah.
Right, because you are doing this on every front with every relationship. And either someone's going to actually understand or they're not.
Right.
Because you can't take the time to constantly re-educate them. As a matter of fact, you're going to need for them to have some observation skills on their own.
Right. I mean, there's also too, and I guess you know, Dr. Shelton-Quinn, you could agree, is that there are times when it causes with like there comes repetitive questions and answering. So there will be like
It's exhausting.
right, and it can be mentally exhausting. But now, like I've been able to put my brain on autopilot. Oh, hey Bo, what's up, bud? So it's so I've been able to put my brain on autopilot. So whenever like you know Jake asks a question, I'm prepared to answer it at least 8 or 9 different times. So, because I know sometimes it's going to take that. Some people, you know, the people that are around me, I'm blessed to say that they're really patient. They're really awesome with Jake. You know, Jake loves them, and it's you know it's great. And so they're very patient when it comes to like when he asks questions, like you know, and sometimes it's you know, it can be overwhelming for some people. Like, you know, why didn't you get it the first time I said it? And I have to tell him, you know, like, you know, he's on the spectrum. He's going to ask you 5 more times. So get ready. So, you know, and I'll tell him that. Or now he's at the age now, he's, you know, he's 12, you know, where he'll tell you, he's like, I might ask you again. So at least he's aware. So like, he'll come up to you. He goes, I might ask you this question a few times, but and then he'll ask the question, and then like maybe like an hour later he'll come back again, you know. But sometimes people get impatient, so it's like I have to train some of the people around me too. It's like, okay, this is, you know, welcome to my world. This is what it is. This is what it's like.
Well, what's exciting about that is that
You might be hearing a dog toy in the background, so I'm sorry. So if you hear,
you know what, that's fine. This is about parenting. This is parenting at its, you know, core, genuine parenting. So it's fine. We'll be with it. Okay. So what I like about it is that Jake is getting to the point where he's starting to be able to tell people what he needs and set expectations.
right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's fun because it's like, you know, I love the fact that he's aware of the things that he does sometimes, and he conducts himself. He holds himself very well. So like he'll always introduce himself, always extend a hand to shake your hand. You know, and every now and then he'll let you know he's going to be a problem before the problem starts.
Oh, wow.
I love that. You've taught him how to front load others for what to expect. And we use that word a lot, front load. And that basically, Dad, I know you know this. I call you Dad. I know that's what he would be saying. But you know that we front load. We let them know before it happens what's going to happen so that can decrease the anxiety and allow our child that is so awesome to be able to enter into whatever aspect of the world they're entering into, whether it's a classroom, whether it's going to a new place for vacation or going to a new person's life. And I have to also kind of piggyback on something you were saying about having to be selective. Autism requires selectivity across every area all the time. Because as parents, we're with them so much that we know the things that are going to potentially be problematic, anxiety provoking. And so we try to prevent it, because one of the things about kids that are so awesome is when they do have those situations that kind of throw them off, it spirals a lot of things. So first of all, you talk about having to emotionally for that child or that individual kind of deal with what is going on, what is happening, and then how do I make myself respond in a way that's appropriate? Or do I even have in my little mental Rolodex here the skill set to deal with it and get my emotions to a point where it's acceptable? And do I even know what is acceptable? So there are a lot of things that happen. And so when we start to see, for example, I'll use Caleb, when we were at Walt Disney World, we're at Magic Kingdom, and he had such an amazing day. We did a timeshare earlier. He did really good. We went and we did all the festivities. When it was a couple of things happened, and I was able to pick up on exactly what was going on. So we are going to get sanitizer because he wants something. and I realized my sanitizer was out. Okay, so there's one what I want to call that, not necessarily a discriminative stimulus, but there's one antecedent that has occurred. What he needed wasn't present. Okay, and Led, you follow me. What he needed wasn't immediately present, and so we had to go and get the sanitizer. So by the time we get the sanitizer and we're walking out of the store, he reaches in, he's trying to touch some water in a rain puddle, and I say no. Okay, so being told no, I said, no, Caleb, come here. And at that moment, I said, oh my goodness, that's going to be another thing that goes in the box of antecedents that cause a problem. So that then as he was moving, he barely grazed his forehead on my elbow. Okay, 3 strikes you're out. That's it. And so meltdown completely. And it's interesting because people do look at you. And I always try to prepare them for, the visible part. So what I did is I had Caleb wear a t-shirt that had on there autism. It had a little rainbow and like a little thing that says, please be kind, autism or something.
Right.
And so he had that on it, as did his brother, because that is a way of also creating awareness, because you don't have time to say, hey, lady, my kid's autism, my kid is autism. Hey, guy, this is what's going on. And people sometimes don't know how to respond when they see a child having a meltdown. There is the immediate perspective that this adult doesn't know how to deal with their kid, or this kid needs this or what have you. And so for parents of our awesome kiddos, it can be very stress provoking. And I've talked to a lot of parents about just how to navigate their own feelings around that, because that's a whole another issue in and of itself. So the one thing I always tell parents, and that I see you're doing this, be prepared. And I typically have a lot of sanitizer, but going in Disney, you carry like one little thing, like one little purse. You're going to be walking for 25 hours. No, just kidding. But you're going to be doing a lot. So I think the best thing is being prepared. The second thing is being so patient, because kids with autism, and a lot of kids that don't have autism but have what we call look-alike disabilities, like even ADHD or emotionality, different types of things like that. Sometimes they will feed off of your emotion. They will demonstrate the emotion that you're displaying. So if you start to get very anxious, it makes them even more anxious, right?
Okay.
And the difference is you may know how to modulate your anxiety. Oftentimes they do not. Once they're on 10, they're on 10. Okay. And it takes a while to de-escalate that. Okay. And so I think just making sure that not only that you're prepared, but you're patient in the sense that you don't mind. I mean, I will get down on one knee, whether it's Caleb or any other kid that is kind of in that situation, and get eye level with the space that they need, and try and provide some support. I often, like for Caleb, he knows what diaphragmatic breathing. You saw when he came up and he's like, and I said, breathing, it kind of stopped because he knows exactly what diaphragmatic breathing is. And he knows that helps, because when you slow down your breathing, it slows down the rush on the inside, right? You can slow down the rush on the inside. You can allow oxygen to get here and start to think about, okay, what have I been taught that doesn't come to me naturally, but I can go back and pull out some of that stuff, put my S on my chest, or my J for Jake on my chest, right? And be able to deal with that situation.
That's awesome. So that's actually a tip that all parents can use. Stop and have your child simply breathe. That's something that they have complete control over. A lot of times children are upset because of a lack of control. So if we can have them immediately start focusing on their breathing, that is giving us a moment to calm ourselves, giving them a moment to calm their selves, and we can mirror that tool back and forth. So that's really great. And then I love the fact that you are bringing awareness in the moment. I'm curious, someone asked this question earlier. When is Autism Awareness Month?
You want to take this one, or that's April?
You can take I always like to, it's funny, I've had it be, I've seen one thing in one posting, and then another, not posting, but There's Autism Awareness Day. There's Autism Awareness Month.
Mhm.
You can take it because I will probably mess that up.
Okay. Autism Awareness Month is the month of April, but for me, every day is Autism Awareness Month. So
Exactly.
anytime that you can raise awareness about like autism, to me, that's year round. So it's
And
like,
I agree with that.
Mhm.
you
And I think
know, so no,
I'm
go,
sorry.
go, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say, I love that you say that because kids with autism, it's not like a lot of the other, and I'm not downing any or putting one, but it's so different because when you see them, you can't tell there's something wrong. And it
Mm-hmm.
affects so many different areas of their lives. For example, we talk about communication, but we also talk about sensory. So they can go in a store and the lights are too bright.
Mm-hmm.
And that can immediately cause emotional dysregulation. That can cause the stimming. It can cause them not to be able to verbalize if they are verbal. It can cause all sorts of things. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so many different domains that autism impacts. I truly agree with what you said, Led. It's every day, and it shouldn't just be just every day for us. It should be every day for anyone who's coming in contact with anyone who has autism.
Right.
Because the interesting thing, and I love working with kids with autism because, it's one of the most misunderstood because there
Mm-hmm.
is no understanding as to the causation, right? We hear about mercury, we hear about aluminum, we hear about vaccinations, but we really don't know as a science what causes it and how to per se fix it. And so what we have to do is we have to educate as many people as we can because it is a social behavioral disorder and we are social beings. And this is what makes it so imperative to make sure that every single person, I remember I went into Walmart and it's interesting. This was like a year or two ago. I go into Walmart and there's a guy that's cleaning the restrooms. And when I came in, I think he immediately got nervous because there's supposed to be a signage that says that they're cleaning it or something, right? And there wasn't. And he immediately started to, and he was an adult, he immediately started to display behaviors that were what they were stemming behaviors.
Okay.
And I started to work with him there in the restroom at the Walmart because I wanted him to feel comfortable in his space and know that he'd done nothing wrong.
Now you've used that phrase a couple of times. Can you explain exactly what stemming is? What does that look like?
Wonderful. Thank you. Stemming is a repetitive behavior that we see in children with autism that can include flapping, the foot flapping. It can be even kind of beating on something. But it's a repetitive, non-purposeful behavior. Well, it appears to be non-purposeful to the untrained or even just a regular human eye. But for the child, for the individual, for the adult, it is very purposeful. Okay. And it can even be verbal stemming, kind of asking something over and over and over, over and over and over, or making a sound over and over and over again. And so a lot of times our kids with autism will do that when there is a lot of anxiety present.
Okay.
So it looks unpurposeful, but it's very purposeful in my mind as both a parent and a psychologist expert in this area, because when they're doing it, they are actually helping themselves to try to de-escalate. I'm trying to de-escalate, right? And so whether it's walking back and forth, whether it's the rocking, whether it's the flapping, all of those are what we call stemming behaviors.
Okay, I see. And you know what? I've definitely seen some of that behavior in adults, and people who I wouldn't say had autism.
That's a good point. Here's the thing. Autism is on such a wide spectrum.
Okay.
Right. No, we don't talk about fixing people. I did make the statement that in the mind of a parent, and when you look at, and I want to address this question I'm saying here, when you look at how science has approached so many different things, we tend to try to find how, as a parent, how can I make this better? What can I do? And many parents come to my office and that's what they're saying. What can I do? And my response to that is, first of all, I see autism as kind of like the way that Led explained it, as a capability. I don't see it as an incapability. And as a matter of fact, my older son is writing a book just about this very thing because he sees Caleb as a superhero, as do we. There's so many things that he can do that we cannot do. For example, the heightened sense of hearing.
Okay.
It is unbelievable, right? The ability to remember things in such a way that we can't touch Caleb's memory. There's no way. Whether episodic memory or even instruction, we can't touch it. So I like to bring it home and saying that no, not a fix, but that's the way we've been conditioned to think as a society. That's a conditioning factor. But when we talk about autism, we look at the strengths. And I think you said that earlier, Erica, about the strengths, and that's where we lead. We lead with the strengths. And so to go back to your previous question, can you repeat that?
Well, I'm not sure if I can repeat the exact question, but I do like where we're going, and it's towards the strengths because that's what I wanted to bring up next. Led, can you tell me some of the strengths that Jake has?
Oh boy, wow. I'll start off with the super hearing because he can hear like he can hear like a fly sneeze in another room. So so like the hearing I could attest to. One of the cool things that we did that I wanted to do, like with the characters in my story though, is highlight the hallmarks of autism without telling anyone that the characters were autistic.
Okay.
This way, and I got the idea from I'll answer the question, but it's I always like walk around a little bit when I'm answering, but it started when I would take Jake to the park and like the kids were making fun of him. They were like, let's make fun of the weird kid, and it's because he introduced himself and he said that I have autism, and the kids, kids can be cruel. So I said to myself, I'm sitting there on the bench and I'm always taking notes. I'm always dictating something. I'm always working, especially when it comes to this comic book and stuff. I said, if I never told anybody that the character is autistic, would they accept this character? If I announce that he's autistic, then people are just going to treat it like, oh, it's just another niche superhero or whatever. So I said to myself, I'm not going to tell anybody that he's autistic. I'm not going to tell anyone at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the hallmarks of everything about his personality, who he is, right? And I focused on everything, the impulsivities, the curiosity, how things get made, the wanting to do right, the wanting to help people, wanting to do all these things. And I incorporated that into the character. And there's so many different things in there. So I think I found his potential when his superpower, when I started embracing his special interest for superheroes. Mm-hmm. Once I started doing that, we found the language where I could actually communicate with him, and I saw how much he loves to draw, how much he loves to create, how much he wants to make costumes, and he wants to know how video games are made. He wants to know all of these things. Jake has enormous potential to do so much more than I ever did. So all I'm doing now is just feeding him and giving the resources to help him get to that point or beyond that. So yeah, and he also is the co-writer to the co-creator of this story as well. As I taught him how to read, I brought him in as a writer. So he helps give me ideas on who the characters are, what they like, what their power should be. And that way, I'm giving him lessons in creative writing. We're doing the art stuff together, creating concept art. So just show how how costumes are drawn and how characters should look. So how panels should be made. I could teach him math about the dimensions of a page. So he's learning all these different things, and he absorbs it like a sponge, which is one of his superpowers. He absorbs everything. All he has to do is just hear it or see it done once, and he'll
Wow.
remember. Yeah. So these are some amazing things that he does, and I try to translate all of those wonderful things into these characters, into the story. And by doing that, I can, make really unique characters that are relatable, that people will look at them instead of saying, "Oh, well, they're autistic." They'll see the traits, the nuances, the hallmarks of autism. They'll see it in these characters, and they'll say like, "Well, I have a brother that acts like this. I have a sister that acts like this. I know a friend that does this. Oh, now I understand why this happens. Well, oh, I understand why, I understand sensory processing disorder in a way, or I understand why the character doesn't look them in the eyes, or when they're talking. So these are why I do that. And Jake is also instrumental in that. So it's a lot about his colorful imagination and me trying to tell his story the way how he wants others to understand him. So
Mhm.
that's another one of his big strengths as well.
That's beautiful. In a way, I feel like every parent should learn something from parents who are raising autistic children. This is why. All too often, I hear parents yelling at their children or complaining about their children because they want them to be something else.
Right.
Instead of recognizing that the way this particular child is molded and how they are blossoming is actually in their talent pool,
Right.
and letting them grow in that particular way. And sometimes people respond with frustration instead of responding with admiration.
Mhm.
Right. I sometimes tell Jake this. It's like, there might not be any space for you in someone's tribe. That's just because you've been meant to be the leader of your own. So be your own leader, and give him all like the traits that he needs to, to think for himself, to actually, to lead and do, like, set the right examples.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Now, earlier in the conversation, Doctor, you said that there were 5 traits.
Oh no, there's several, but they're the ones that we tend to look at. And when you say traits, are you talking about the defining characteristics?
Yes, 5 defining characteristics. Yes. What are those?
So we look at impairment in social skills functioning.
Uh huh.
We look at impairment in communication. We
Mm-hmm.
also look at those restrictive and repetitive behaviors. We also look at, and we say 5, but it's a lot, a lot of different little things. Also, like even the emotional dysregulation, the executive dysfunction. Um, those are the ones that I like to focus on. Those are I guess you would
Okay.
say the top 5. But I want to, as you were talking about, just you know, what parents need, how important it is for parents to kind of see, and piggybacking on something else that you said when you talk about seeing other people that are adults and it looks like maybe, and so I talked about how there's this long spectrum, there's a wide range of what
Okay.
autism looks like. A lot of people who may not have the diagnosis,
Uh
but
huh.
may have autism, if that makes
I
sense.
see. Yes,
And
you want to know something? I interviewed a fantastic, magnificent person, and they did not discover that they had autism until they were over 30.
mhm.
How
That's
typical is that?
and I want to say it's more typical than not, because what it there's for kids that are high functioning, a lot of times they go under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what I mean by that is they're not doing some of the more obvious things, or either their academics is overcompensating, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's not as much attention paid to the social skills challenges or
Mm-hmm.
the idiosyncratic kind of uh, oddities that they have, because we look for those um, atypical behaviors, kind of make them stand out, right? And so
Okay.
and the interesting thing about that is, as Led was talking about, because kids don't know how to interact with kids that are different, sometimes they end up kind of just looking like the kid that maybe nobody plays with him as much. He's just really smart, or he's just really nerdy. Or you said something about, I think, Led, you mentioned something about geeking out or whatever. And so,
Right.
again, all of these are ways that we have kind of been conditioned to look at the world. And so those kids may never get assessed. They may never get diagnosed. And so what happens is they kind of struggle all the time with that social piece, that communication piece, and that emotional piece, never really knowing where they fit. And so it's so important that we create this inclusive environment for neurodiversity as we start to have not just the conversations, but have dialogue that provides insight, that provides the what can you do's, right? That provides the support and that lets people know. I always, when I'm in these meetings, it's always interesting when I've either done an evaluation. Caleb, or so that was Caleb. He's in there with Dad, but I have to do the check-in. But as we're talking, I have to make sure that people know that it's not an ostracization or putting you out type of situation. Everyone should be able to embrace autism because it is just another aspect of what development can look like. So for me, having a child with autism, a lot of times I'm not only there to talk about what the results and the data shows, but I want parents to know what's the real process. I'm not just an evaluator or a psychologist or an expert in autism. I am a mother of an 8-year-old who has autism. I am a mother of, for the first, and I heard you, Led, talking about certain things that, I think you said something about you have to be very selective. I had to be selective in what we were able to do. For the first 4 years of Caleb's life, we didn't go to places that he couldn't handle. For example, I remember my other son wanted to go to Chuck E. Cheese. Caleb, it hurt his ears too bad. The noise was just too loud. So we could not. So when my other son and my husband went to Chuck E. Cheese, I took Caleb to a movie. I remember because we went to see Cars, one of the Cars, and we had to sit, in an area and pick them up. But, just having to be selective. Even with Disney, we've wanted to do that for a long time, but I had to wait until Caleb was able to do that. And now places make provision for our kids with autism. Disney has their disability access services where they rush you to the line. There's no waiting because, as Led brought out, the impulsivity. Our kids with autism, though they can hear stuff that on a whole nother planet, right?
Wow.
And are able to, Caleb can shred one nugget into 1.5 billion pieces in seconds. It's like unbelievable that he can do that. But when it comes to being able to endure the noise and endure the lights sometimes and endure even the smells of things, or even just being in a situation where there are a lot of people around, we have to be very selective, and we have to make sure other people understand why that selectivity is not just important, but it is a necessity.
Right.
Very interesting. I like that you highlighted that there are accommodations being made currently. And not only that, but there are job opportunities that are being created for people who have autism. The brilliance is being recognized and valued.
Yes.
Mhm.
I will tell you, I would rather have a child or an adult with autism, because of their attention to certain details and the meticulous nature you look, I have worked with kids with autism for a very long time. When it comes to a computer situation, a cell phone situation, my kiddos have been awesome to help me because I am not the one. And so, and even it's interesting, even with Caleb, even at 8 years old, there are things, he's so consistent. Everything is
Okay.
going to be done the same way. And I love that. So, for example, if my older son comes in, he'll kick his shoes north and south and can't find one. Caleb is going to put those shoes in the hall tree every single time. If something is out of place, he's going to put it back because things have to be in order. Those are great
Okay.
skills. We have to find those skills that are their superpowers, right? And highlight
Exactly.
and allow them to see just how brilliant they are, even down to affirmations. Affirmations are important
Mhm.
because one of the things that can happen is our kids with autism can get lost in the shuffle in schools and in places where the focus is on other types of strengths. And so we have to take the responsibility, get the torch and push them forward in things that they can do, right? And highlight those things. And I think that's so important because that's one of the reasons why, and this is my pet peeve, when I see that those strengths are not being utilized, but the focus is on the negative. And there are a lot of times that can happen in schools and sometimes in, different places. So we have to be the ones that push that envelope, that push that and say, hey, why don't you let him do that? Hey, this is what he can do. And then the affirmations are important, building them up.
Mm.
Caleb can tell you those affirmations every single day. We do them. Why is that important? Because he can get lost in the shuffle if he doesn't know the definition of who he is.
I love that. And what came through with Jake is that Jake has extremely high self-esteem.
Yes, he
Yes,
does.
he does. I
He
love
is
that.
extremely, extremely confident. I mean, I don't want to say arrogant, but he's extremely confident. That's one thing for sure.
Well, his confidence shines through. I was curious what techniques or what practices that you use to build that up in him, because I also think that's something that every single parent needs to be able to do for their child.
To tell you the truth, I don't know if it's a method that everybody practice, but I just gave him a task. I just gave him a job to do,
Okay.
and I would say, I would say, Jake, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to I need your help. Help me
Ah,
find this. Help me do this, and then that would just be whatever his goal or his mission was. You
okay.
know, okay, I
Jake,
did it. Great. Awesome. And then I would just keep doing that. Even if I knew how to do it, I just wanted to see like where he was. And like, Jake, can you do me a favor? I was like, could you change the batteries in this remote? Could you take care of this for me? It's like, or ask him where something is in the house. Uh, or I'll bring up some little interesting fact. Hey, Jake, did you know this? Just so he could just store it in his head.
mhm.
Or just at least to be able to say that he did something.
So
So
it sounds like you're really empowering him.
yeah, I figured that like that was the best thing for me to do. It's that I like myself. I mean, I remember I was a kid coming home from school. After school there would be the like maybe some cartoons I wanted to watch before I did my homework. But like while I was waiting for my parents to get home, there was some like a toss in the microwave. Until they got back home. When you have both parents working, and so
Right?
it's like there was just that kind of independence our generation had. So we really relied on ourselves. So the I keep thinking that I keep thinking back to like around the time Jake was diagnosed, was like we just received a diagnosis, and I was thinking to myself, what kind of world is he gonna live in? Like who, like how are people going to accept him? Is he, does he need people to take care of him? There were so many different things that ran through my head because I really didn't have a strong understanding of what autism was. I was learning just as much as Jake was. We were both
Mhm.
learning, and learning how to understand each other. And it got to a point where it's like, okay, well, if you want to be Superman, if you want to be Batman, Batman does this. Okay. Well, if you're going to be Batman, Batman doesn't have to go to the bathroom with his dad. He can go by himself like a
Mhm.
big guy. Okay. Well, if you're going to do this, like Superman can microwave his own food. And he says, why don't you do that? And, I'll stand there and watch him do it. Well, if Spider-Man can do this, you see, that was the other thing I would encourage him. Like, Spider-Man's
Okay.
good at science. Okay. So if you want to be good at science like Spider-Man or Tony Stark or whoever, you want to be that smart, you got to study this.
Mhm.
And those are my little incentives on helping him get a little further, or like or teach him the one plate, one mug, one spoon rule, that you could have the same mug, the same spoon, the same plate for the entire day. So when
Okay.
you're done, rinse it out, you know Instead of putting it in the sink, like rinse it out, set it to the side. When you're hungry, you go back and get something else again. Teaching him those kind of responsibilities, teaching him those little things, just those little drills. When you get up in the morning, did you make your bed? Always asking him, making sure like that mental checklist is always there. And that's what I always do. Did you make your bed? And then, did you take a bath yet? He goes, what did you eat? And I'm like, did you put everything away? And they'll ask those questions. Yeah, yeah. And then I don't have to do it. He'll just come to me, Dad, I made my own breakfast this morning. Good. This is, I put the dishes in the sink too. I'm like, okay, good for you. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So
Consistency over years, really, because he's 12 now,
right.
has begun to pay off.
Repetition, yeah, definitely.
Repetition. Okay. Okay. So is Jake in a regular classroom, or did you decide to put him in a different classroom?
Well, he's in a non-public school setting right now. He attends Brooklyn Blue Feather Elementary here in Brooklyn, New York, and it's a fantastic school. And it's like the kids there are amazing. The staff there is like they're really good with him. And he's in he's in a classroom setting where there's 8 children or less.
Oh wow.
So because Jake has a tendency to lose focus when a lot is going on, so that there are like sensory issues where he'll he can be easily distracted, but loud noises are usually his thing. It's like if there's now he can prepare himself if a siren comes down the street, like a fire, and like a siren from a fire engine comes down the street. If we're at the train station and a train comes into the station, like usually he'll cover his ears, or he'll have like a set of headphones with him whenever he needs it. But as he's getting older, he's preparing for that, and like they're teaching him, like the social behaviors and stuff, and like so he is getting those services, which is really awesome. So we see a really big change in him, and in that school. So we're really happy for him. So, and he loves it. He doesn't want to miss school. So he loves going. So it's like they must be doing something really great, because he really wants to go. So
Excellent. I love it. I love it. What kind of things are you seeing, Doctor, in young adults who have autism? What kind of success are you seeing?
I just celebrated with one of my good friends who has an older son. He is, I think, 24, and he has autism. And he got a very, very nice paying job, a 6-figure job, actually, in computer science, building these different coding type of situation. That's not my area, but had to do something coding and computers, and he is independently out here. He's in Houston, Texas, where I am, but he has his own place, and he is doing really well. I think just again, when it comes to college and planning for our kiddos that are awesome, first of all, having that plan laid out in advance.
Okay.
Right. And then also helping them to identify what they like that coincides with their strengths. Right. And I one of the things I want to also add to that is I was listening to you, Led, and I think just being able to not just only focus on the strengths, but I like how you empowered him. And when we can give them the chance to taste success.
Yes.
When they taste it, and success tastes really good, right? And because success is good, then I can keep doing what it takes to be successful, to get the reward, to get the positive, support, and people recognizing me and saying I did a good job, because that feels really good. And a lot of times our kids and our adults with autism don't get that. And so we want to make sure that we do that. And so when it comes to what fields can they be successful in? What's going to allow them to use the things that come naturally, right? Where is there a place where I can thrive, not just survive? And so my friend's son has found a place where he can thrive, because it's, it allows him to be repetitive in the coding and doing what he's doing. It allows him to utilize his amazing memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to be around a whole bunch of group of people. He can sit there at his computer, and he has a few people that he makes contact with, and he's being able to be successful because it doesn't put him in a position where he has to minimize all of the great things that make up who he is. And that's the key.
100%. I love it. And teaching your children to gravitate towards the places that they are celebrated and not just tolerated.
That's right.
And mhm. And quite frankly, that's a lesson for us all, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to highlight you guys, and if you could give 2 or 3 tips for parents who have an autistic child, or just parenting in general, I would absolutely love it. We're going to go to you, Doctor, first. What are your thoughts?
Yes, ma'am. So when we talk about the 3 things, the first thing, love your child where they are. My grandmother, who lived to be 92, she would always say, children are a gift.
Okay.
They're a gift, and you were chosen to have this gift. And so I think that the first thing, just, love them where they are. Celebrate what they can do.
Okay.
It does every single day. If you celebrate each day, you have one thing that you celebrate each day. What you're going to do, that's going to build that child immensely, because they're not going to forget that. And then the last one is patience. Have patience with not just the child, but also with the process. Have patience with the process, because one of the things that we know, even for kids I've worked with, and even in my own child, they're not the same child you see every year. They're developing, they're growing, they're taking in the world like a sponge. And when you're ready, they'll share that with you. Be patient. Children with autism will give you what you're looking for when they're ready. You can't force them. It's only when they're ready. So be patient.
I love it. I love it. And I want you to address this comment from Dr. Lay, actually. He says that studies show that cannabis can help with autism, according to Dr. Adi, I don't know, Dr. Aaron in Israel.
Yes.
Adi Aaron's. Okay.
Yes. So I'm very familiar with that research and have had the chance to see how that works. And I understand the biology behind that, because we talked about how our kids with autism can be really impulsive. Sometimes they have an extensive need, and I didn't talk about this earlier, for proprioceptive movement. And so there's a lot of sometimes moving around, and difficulty focusing. What cannabis does, okay, it slows it down. Okay, because the autism brain looks very different, and studies have shown this. It looks different. And so when we talk about what's happening in the autism brain, it's processing so much information so quickly at a concentrated level. It's not that our kids with autism don't have the information. Oh, they have it. They probably have more than you, to be honest. But being able to do the output is what is difficult for them. So when you can slow it down, you can then allow the space. Do you hear me? Allow the space for them to be able to give it to you. Okay.
Well, I kind of wonder about that, because I'm thinking, do I want to stop their talent? It almost feels like hampering their talent.
So let me address that. Not so much.
Okay. Help me with that.
I'll say that and I think you have to look at it, because there are some things that can also happen with our kids with autism as they start to develop. Depending on how they learn to manage, you may see aggressive behaviors. You may see more self-injurious behavior, depending on the child and what situation they're in. And sometimes, we know our kids and we love our kids, and we know we've been helping them and giving them the supports, but there are new and novel situations that can truly throw them off. It can be something that you just can't plan for. And then there can be everyday atypicalities as they develop that throw them off. And so, though I'm not a proponent one way or the other, I have seen the research, and I've seen some children that have utilized, and it's not the same. I mean, it's the CBD oil is what we're talking about, or the CBD drops or what have you. And so it's not getting your child high from what I understand, but what it does do is it helps to kind of slow down the anxiety, because the anxiety oftentimes is what leads to the inappropriate, oftentimes difficult behaviors. And so that's my experience with it. And I've seen people be able to report positive outcomes that are commensurate with Dr. Aron's findings there, that my child is now able to focus, and that's one of the things people have been doing. But there are other things too, because I've also seen this data about stem cell. I've seen a lot of different stuff. And then you have the ABA therapy, which is the applied behavior analysis. And, some people don't like that because it does push the child to limits, because it's constant, repetitive. For example, the child may start screaming every time this happens, and you go through 55 different episodes of them screaming so they can try to learn to sit in the chair opposed to getting up and running back and forth. And so each thing is going to have its pros and its cons, and it's really a personal decision. But I always say, look at the data and know your child.
You know what? Know your child, because it does sound stressful. So, Dr. Lay, were you saying CBD oil, or were you just saying cannabis? Because I noticed that Dr. Shelton-Quinn, you said oil, and Dr. Lay is saying cannabis. So I'm wondering, what's the best practice? And it looks like that this is in trials right now, or is it actively being used?
No, there are people that are actively utilizing. I mean, I've seen a lot of, and again, if he's talking about Dr. Lay, you're going to have to be specific for me there, because the CBD oil, yes, CBD oil and cannabis. It depends on what you're talking about specifically. Okay, so I have seen that too. I'm not as comfortable with that as I am with CBD oil. And the reason is because there are also, we look at what do they say in general about cannabis and what it does to brain cells over time. And so that would be my discontentment or disarray with that. I know you're laughing. I know you are.
Yeah. I think he's
not no getting no babies high now.
You have to take the THC out of that.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, very interesting.
Right.
Very interesting. Okay, sounds good. Dr. Lay's mischievous. He's mischievous from time to time. So jump in here, Led. Jump in here. What are your last thoughts? What are your closing thoughts?
Oh boy. Wow. Let's see. As a person who has learned to embrace special interests, and I found so much success in doing that. Now, I know it's like superheroes, but for every child is different. They say, like, really, you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's never going to be the same. And it's, I've had such a wonderful experience, like working with Jake and, understanding him through superheroes and embracing his special interests. I will piggyback and say that, yes, it's going to take a certain degree of patience. You're going to learn a whole new level, like Zen master level, like of patience, like patience you thought you never had. So that's something that you're going to learn. Like, be prepared for chaos. Like, also too, with the same note, it's like the yin and yang. You're also like an agent of chaos. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and you're gonna have to be prepared for it. And this is just one of the many balls that you juggle as an autism parent. So you're going to the more that you're in, you don't realize you're doing it. And and the doctor said the same thing too. Like, knowing your kid, I can visibly look at Jake and tell when he's having a bad day. I'll know when a sentence is about to trigger him. I'll know when, but it's that kind of attentiveness and being there, spending time with them, getting to know them. All those things that, that I found just by engaging and asking questions. And that's the reason why I built all of this to begin with, was so that I could engage and ask him questions and help him feel comfortable. These were the things that really helped me as a parent, not really knowing what I was doing. I didn't go to like a Google search or figure it out. This was just something that I just thought I should be doing. And it's like, so I found that by asking him questions about like how his day was, or like just leaving the door open for him to ask me any question that he wanted, no matter how outrageous or outlandish it sounds, and not being mad at him for asking those kind of questions. So like making myself a resource for him to come to and ask me those questions and feel comfortable, that also was very helpful. It's and you're gonna hear some real outrageous ones too. And so those are some of the, like, if I could say, like, if I could give any recommendation to a parent, it's like, yeah, be patient, but also be ready for the chaos, be prepared for it. Just know
Ready
that
for the chaos.
right.
Wow.
And the wonderful thing about it is just that be attentive, be that person to ask questions, find out the questions together. These are the things that like I've always been on top of Jake with all the time. If he asks me something and like I have to say I don't know, and sometimes he'll ask me, Dad, how come you don't know some of the questions that and it's like, because I just don't know, but we could figure it out. It's no problem. It's like, it's okay. But I wanted to give him a forum where he shouldn't be afraid to ask his questions. There's no such thing as stupid questions when it comes to me. I wanted to make sure that he understands that this is the time when you need to like ask all of these questions, and just it's there's so much that I do just unconsciously. It's like hard for me to like actually pinpoint like that kind of advice like to give, but like it's
I think
just
you've given
so
us a
many
lot.
things.
I think you've given us a lot in your stories. I'm very curious. My last question for you is, does Jake ever ask you about being different?
He embraces being different.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that he hears me say is that normal is boring.
All right.
So
I like
it. I embrace that. I am the living embodiment that normal is boring. So it's it's like, I remember one time he said, Dad, I wish I was normal. And I actually looked at him and I was like, why? Why would you want that for? I was like, why? It says normal is boring. Do you know what normal people do? They don't watch cartoons. Normal people don't do this. Normal people, And he was just like, yeah, okay, I'll I like my autism then. He's like, but are you autistic, Dad? I was like, no, I'm just weird.
Oh. You know what? I think it's those kind of spontaneous responses that you have given Jake that gives him that confidence, that really star power, self-esteem that comes shining through. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's really beautiful. Now, you guys stay backstage to hang out. I'm going to say goodbye to our audience for now. Guys, it has been absolutely amazing taking this journey with you guys and learning about our superhero within, Dr. Shelton-Quinn and I was going to say Dr. Led Bradshaw, but
it has a nice ring to it.
Well, I just gave you a doctorate just like that. But
that was on my bucket list. I always wanted a PhD.
You should do it.
Yeah, I'm going to go for it. Why not?
Do it.
Sky's the limit.
Well, you know what? When he graduates, he's coming back here to show off his new doctorate level education. Maybe you can get a doctorate in comic books. I'm not sure what that might be called, but you certainly have the experience.
I'm putting it on my vision board. I'm doing it.
I like it. So family, thank you for stopping by. And I'll just say bye-bye for now. winning.